He gets deported. He's here illegally. We have a United States senator and a bunch of knuckleheads in the House that now say their main priority is bringing back someone. Maybe he's not a terrorist, but he's a potential terrorist. He's a terrorist watch list person.
There's a lot more to this guy than meets the eye. I stand with the White House. I think he's MS-13, and I think that they got the goods on it.
But do they have the goods on him? That's the question. Well, last night, after weeks of refusing to reveal whatever evidence they had against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Department of Justice released some more documents to justify his wrongful deportation. So before we show you their alleged receipts, Cenk, should we expect you to just totally change your mind on the concept of due process if they do have compelling evidence?
Yeah, no, there's two different issues here. One is this guy a criminal and an MS-13 gang member, as Trump administration claims or not? We're gonna get, I think there's pretty definitive evidence on that. So we'll get to that in a second. But most importantly, what Yaz is saying, which is, are we gonna have due process or aren't we? That's by far the most important issue here, because that's what affects all Americans and our system of government. So let's tackle both right now.
Absolutely. So the Justice Department shared records detailing how police officers in Maryland determined that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13 during an arrest in 2019, allegations he and his lawyer deny. He had no criminal history at the time, which the Justice Department also admits in their documents. So here it is. In a document titled Gang Field Interview Sheet, the Prince George's County Police Department detailed how in March 2019, it approached Abrego Garcia along with 3 other people for loitering at a Home Depot parking lot in Hyattsville. Abrego Garcia said in a court filing that he was there looking for day labor work. Police said he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of the presidents on the bills. And the officers said such insignia, indicating see no evil, hear no evil, and say no evil, was indicative of Hispanic gang culture. The officers said they consulted with a reliable, confidential source who advised that Abrego Garcia is the rank of Chiqueo, with the moniker of Chele in the gang. Yeah, didn't the Ratliff kids just depict the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil on the boat going to the White Lotus? Like, I didn't know that they were supposed to be Hispanic gang members, but you learn something new every day. Of course, that's ridiculous. It's super common industry. It's been all over since forever. But police assessed that 2 other people who were with Abrego Garcia in the Home Depot parking lot were also gang members. So here's more. A court agreed to deny Abrego Garcia bond after his arrest. He wrote that the allegation that he is a gang member appears to be trustworthy and is supported by other evidence in the record in the Prince George's County police documents. So Garcia was handed over to immigration authorities, but later in 2019, as we have discussed on this show many times, an immigration judge barred him from being sent back to El Salvador after he proved he had a well-founded fear of future persecution from local gangs. Then last month, immigration agents stopped Abrego Garcia in an IKEA parking lot and deported him to El Salvador days later. So far, not much new information has been revealed, but they shared some other history as well. Here's this, another document released Wednesday from the Department of Homeland Security in 2019 said police identified 2 men, one of whom was Abrego Garcia, as having been previously detained in a murder investigation. Abrego Garcia denied being connected to a murder investigation, the document said, and he was never charged. So aside from the new documents, DHS also posted on social media that Abrego Garcia's wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, had sought a temporary protective order against him in 2021. The petition for a protective order described a disagreement and physical altercation that included hitting and scratching, but the case was ultimately dismissed. Today, Vasquez Sura responded to that incident being publicized, saying After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution after a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. No one is perfect and no marriage is perfect. That is not a justification for ISIS action of abducting him and deporting him to a country where he was supposed to be protected from deportation. But despite the fact that his wife has been aggressively fighting for his return from El Salvador, Sean Hannity and Attorney General Pam Bondi had the audacity to say this on Fox News just last night.
I'm having a hard time understanding why his wife is advocating for him to come back.
Well, America is safer because he is gone. Maryland is safer because he is gone, and that woman that he is married to and that child he had with her, they are safer tonight because he is out of our country and sitting in El Salvador where he belongs.
Cenk, the thing is, none of this matters. This conversation does not matter. None of this was ever supposed to be litigated this way in the media. And it doesn't matter what the Republicans come up with to justify their actions. Nothing justifies deporting a person without due process, whether he was illegal, whether he was a gang member, like all of that was supposed to be decided in the courts before any kind of action was taken against him, let alone any kind of deportation to El Salvador. Nothing any of them says matters. Like no evidence they released to the media matters. They should have taken all that evidence to the court, but they didn't do that. So right now, I feel like they're just trying to pacify the American people with this. They're trying to politicize this moment because they don't really have a choice, I guess. They want to maintain whatever support Trump still has left, and they know that their base loves to see deportations. So they're doubling down on this one, making a whole story out of it, focusing on the deportation itself, demonizing a man who hasn't done anything wrong. And they're constantly reminding their supporters that we all live under this constant threat of gang violence and terrorism, to the point that the fear of that looming threat of gang violence and terrorism overtakes their conviction that due process is the law of this land and that needs to be protected. This is also stupid. The principle does not change with the circumstance, and the people who keep justifying these actions, specifically the Pam Bondis and the Sean Hannity, they know that.
Yeah. So I think of course, they do have a choice. I think that they're keep going in the wrong direction here, the Trump administration, on purpose. They think that this helps them politically. We'll get to that in a second. So first of all, look, if you're on the right and you've heard that, well, a judge thought that maybe he might be MS-13, and there was an informant who said he was MS-13, and he wore a Chicago Bulls hat, and by the way, a court did, as we explained in 2019, early in 2019, held him without bond because they weren't sure, right? So that gives you plenty of stuff to say, aha, that's it. We have, and the potential domestic violence. Now, he was never convicted of anything, etc. But you think, okay, good, bad guy, I'm good enough. Okay, now, so let me explain why I don't think that is good enough. Number one, not convicted of a single thing. If you're not convicted of anything, well, then they could just make up charges about you and say, hey, you know what, you did, they could dig into your life. You did this wrong, you did that wrong at some point. So it doesn't matter, we're not having a real trial for you, we're just getting rid of you, okay? So number two, this is really important, guys. So Yaz read to you guys what happened later in 2019, where another judge looked at it more definitively. And after looking at all the evidence, he said, no. Not only is he not in a gang, there's credible threats against his life by gangs in El Salvador because he's not in a gang. And they explained that if he was granted a withholding of removal from the country, and it allowed him to stay in the United States temporarily and receive a work permit. Okay, so that's the judge saying, you cannot send him out of the country, and that is the last ruling, okay? So when Trump administration sends him out, they're defying a court order already. Someone already looked at it and said, do not send him back. He is not a gang member, and the gangs actually might hurt him or kill him. So Now, if you say, no, I know better because I saw it on Fox News and I trust the Trump people and, and I think they're angels and I don't care because he's undocumented, et cetera. But you're not just saying that you don't care about this guy. You're saying, I don't care about our constitutional system of government. I don't care that a judge ordered him to stay in the country. Then the Supreme Court ruled unanimously, which was shocking, that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return. And then a lower court said he's definitively not an MS-13 and he must be returned. He hasn't been convicted of anything. And the Trump administration admitted in court that it was an administrative error that sent him to El Salvador, not because any judge ordered it or that they had even accurately assessed that he should be sent to El Salvador. So if you want to rest your laurels on, I don't care about anything. And by the way, at some point he was undocumented and yeah, the judge said we should keep him here, but I don't care about the judge. I don't agree with any of that. Okay, but what you're doing is you're burning down the judicial system that we have. And we can't do that. That is by far the most important part of this story. Because if we start saying that allowing the executive branch to say, I don't care what the court's ruled, I'm gonna do whatever I want, that's not a democracy. That's not a constitutional form of government. That's an authoritarian government. And if he has a right to send this guy after the courts tell him not to, and to bring him back, then he could send you or anyone else. Well, wait, I'm a US citizen, he can't do that. Is that right? Because Trump has been saying for the last week that he wants to do it for American citizens, the homegrowns, and that he wants to send you to El Salvador. Now, I'm not saying you in particular, but if you say, oh, well, he's talking about killers and rapists and all these things, but he's talking about doing it without due process. So how do you know if they're bad guys? Nah, this is not our form of government. This is not America. So this is less about immigration. And even in that case, on the immigration issue, it's unbelievable that they sent the wrong guy. They know they sent the wrong guy. They admitted it was an administrative error and they won't fix it. And the reason for that, as we explained, is politics. They think that they can mislead people enough to get folks to believe that Democrats are just protecting gang members. And if they feel like that, if they lie enough, like JD Vance says, oh, he is MS-13, and they say all these terrible things about him, they could trick people into thinking that he is in that gang and the Democrats are protecting criminals, right? That's the political play here. But in the meanwhile, A, they're wrong about that completely, and B, much more importantly, if we allow this to stand, then they could really do anything they want to anybody, including US citizens, because then we don't have due process anymore. They don't have to present you to a court. They can just make unilateral decisions and there'll be nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, I mean, you said that the judicial aspect was the most important aspect of this story. I would argue it's the only aspect of this story that matters. Everything else is superfluous and it's just them trying to save their own, you know what. But you are right, they're making it political. Let's see how that's going.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.